Why is 21 million coins enough? As we all know, Bitcoin has a maximum supply of 21 million coins. That's all there's ever going to be. Now, this was by design. Now, in my past videos, you would have heard me say, actual fact, I don't agree with these projects that are printing more than 21 million or they haven't got a maximum supply. So in today's video, I just want to kind of reinforce the reason why I believe that every single cryptocurrency has no need for more than 21 million. And it's the same reason why I try to avoid any project that doesn't meet this particular specification. So by design, Bitcoin and any other cryptocurrency that has this 21 million maximum supply is designed so that it can remain or it can maintain its value even if the niche or the community remains quite small. The original idea with this is Satoshi Nakamoto wanted to find a value that kind of fitted in. So if the community grew, the project can go with it, and if it didn't, it could maintain this value, and that's the whole point. And when you start getting billions of coins printed, the chances of that project remaining valuable in the long term actually reduces quite massively. So the quote here, Nakamoto intended Bitcoin's unit price to eventually align with traditional fiat currencies so that 0.001 BTC would be the equivalent to £1 or €1 or $1. Currently, the BTC value for 0.001 is about £8.60. So as you can see, it's actually gone past that expectation into a point of, for a lot of new users, into this no-go zone. Whereas if you look at Decred DCR, that same calculation of 0.001, the actual outcome at the moment is actually 2p. So there's still a lot of room for maneuver, and because it's so low, the likelihood of Decred maintaining its value is actually really high. Now, when I think of investing and when I think of getting into cryptocurrencies, I am really thinking about the long term. I'm not really into speculating and I'm not really into trading. I really am looking for a decent investment for my future, for my family's future, and to maintain those values. And that's why I believe that 21 million is so important. Now, in order for that calculation to become true, so in order for 0.001 to be around €1, what most people don't realise is the actual value of a single coin, so a single Decred or a single BTC, is going to be around £1,000. Now, because that, and don't forget, this is going to be based on a few other aspects as well, but just making sure that we have that sound money and making sure that we can go in the right direction. So as you can see from the past calculations, whereas Bitcoin is actually slightly actually quite a lot overinflated past that price, things like Decred are actually still growing in that direction. So we still have actually quite a long way to go. The current value is something like £14. So as you can see, there's like 986 more pounds that it can go in that direction before it meets this kind of niche area. The other reason that I kind of don't agree with currencies or cryptocurrencies printing like billions and billions and billions is also the way that cryptocurrencies can be divided. So let's just look at what this first perceived gain or this value prospect of this 21 million is. So these are kind of the calculations that have to happen in order for this to come true. So based on the original calculation and the original design of the project, and this is a maximum of 21 million coins, this prospect doesn't affect anything with any more coins than that. Even if there's only 100 million, it doesn't work the same. So firstly, it has to have a maximum supply of 21 million. Secondly, it has to have a long-term future. So it has to have security, it has to have development, and it has to have a community that cares about it. Now, if the community or the development start acting in improper ways, that long-term future gets reduced. So there are a few calculations that you really have to look at, but that's the premise, a long-term future. That kind of £1,000 per coin won't happen for 10, 15, 20 years, but is the fact that it can build up to that over the long term. If a project doesn't have a long-term future, that will not happen. So that's the first thing. You have to look at the way the development works, the way the community works, and the way that people invest. Now, a lot of projects, they actually have a lot of capital flooding into them. And what happens with investor capital is normally that capital is 1 to 5 years. So it wants to be pulled out straight away. Now, what happens to a project when the only thing holding up is this massive amount of capital and that suddenly gets pulled out? Obviously, it deflates. So that's another thing I look at, is what kind of capital is driving the project. Things like Decred, actually, they produce their own capital. So the more valuable a project becomes and the more sustainable long-term it becomes, the actual value of the treasury that governs Decred and that produces money for all of the people that do the right thing will actually grow with it. So it's not relying on external capital. So straight away, that's one value you can look at if you're looking for long-term investment and long-term future. The next thing is it has to have this small niche adoption. Now, if a project has small niche adoption, it's really saying that the community has to be doing the right thing, okay? And if the community is doing the right thing, and that's not the people building it, that's the people that like the project, that's the people that hold the coins, that spend the coins. And you have to have this cyclic effect where the coins are moving and the coins are being spent and they're being used in useful ways. If they're not used in useful ways, that obviously affects the long-term prospects as well. So these are things that you have to think about. So we're looking at maximum supply of 21 million, long-term future, a small niche, and then finally you can look towards this actual value of £1,000 per coin based on the original design. So with all that being said, now we need to look at satoshis. So meet my little friend Satoshi. I was going to do a Scarface type thing there, but no. Anyway, satoshis are what make up the individual coin, and some people, especially people new to this space, don't realize that you can actually divide a coin up by 100 million per coin, and that's also by design. Now, if you think about it, if you've got 21 million coins and you try and say, right, 7 billion people are going to get involved in that, it's obviously impossible for 7 billion people to own one coin. And that's where the satoshis come in, and you start looking at the reverse order for these things. So each coin can be divided into a million. And you start looking at things like, okay, so 100 million. So you start looking at things like, right, if you can't own a coin, one coin can be used for multiple things. So it has a greater value. So the first value is, it could be something like this. Okay, I want to buy a coffee. Can I pay 3,400 satoshis for that, please? And that's something you can do. Or can I pay 10 satoshis for that? And you give over your 10 satoshis. So when you're looking at your app, you actually calculate it from the right hand side rather than the left hand side, and it kind of works like that. So the one thing you do have to watch out for, of course, is mining fees. Now, as it currently stands, the mining fees are actually quite high for pretty much all of these projects. There are a couple that really have low fees, like Bitcoin Cash just has no fees at all there, and it's quite impressive. But there's a couple of things that kind of don't really work out well there. But as time goes forward and they start looking at things like the Lightning Network and off-chain processes, these fees will obviously come down, and so smaller Satoshi amounts can be used. And that's really important in order for this calculation to go forward, and for order for greater adoption to happen, the Satoshis will become increasingly important, in which case mining fees probably have to go down for smaller orders. I don't see on-chain orders coming less. So let's look at this, 100,000. It becomes a time in your life when you say, right, okay, 100,000, what's that going to buy me? Well, that's going to buy me eventually a car, So that's the way you kind of, if it gains mass adoption, and some people say, oh, Bitcoin's going to hit 1 million, and that could happen, it might not happen, whatever, but that's when the satoshis become more important. So you have 100,000 satoshis, all of a sudden you can buy a car for that price. And as you can see, the satoshis will become more important, and it stops being about this one Bitcoin. It becomes more about owning 100,000 satoshis and so on. And then you look at 1 million. That all of a sudden that becomes buying a house. And the equation goes on. But ultimately, you are going to have 99 million coins. Sorry, it is 100 million coins for one project. So as you can see, the actual calculation, there's enough there to supply the whole world of 7 billion people with this currency, only having 21 million coins. And when you look at it this way, and every single coin has this same calculation, whether you're looking at Stellar, XRP, whether you're looking at Ethereum, whatever coin you're looking at, they can all be divided, one coin, into 100 million coins. So think about it like that and let that absorb. It's actual fact. And then you start to realize, well, why do they need 100 million coins, and why do they need to keep printing? Why does that value have to keep going up? Why? So keep that in mind. And these projects that have got 100 billion, like XRP, well, that the only people that is really going to benefit are the core group of holders. And when you think about it like that, it's a crazy thing. So this 21 million coins is an absolute necessity. Now, just in case you're wondering, because we all hear about banks printing money, and you're wondering how many satoshis are there in a 21 million project. So currently, we're doing this coronavirus thing, lockdown thing, and there's just been a whole bunch of money printed. Now, the first wave of printing of the US dollars was $2 trillion. So just in case you're wondering, say, well, how are we gonna capitalize $2 trillion if necessary, or $12 trillion, whatever? Well, satoshis in a 21 million project actually equate to 2 quadrillion, 100 trillion. That is 2,100 trillion. So you've got 2,100 trillion satoshis in a 21 million project. And that's a big number. I know when we was kids in the playground, we used to try and make up all these big numbers, but that's a huge number. And the likelihood of us ever needing that properly is actually quite slim, especially in the short term. So, some food for thought there. Now, just in case you're wondering, let me just go over to the full screen here. Just in case you're wondering, what are the projects I'm looking at that have these values? Now, currently I don't look at Bitcoin, because if you think about it, the Bitcoin of 0.001 has already gone past that massively. So if a project's meant to be worth £1,000, we're already almost 8 times over that value. So because we're so early to the game, this is actually not a very good value prospect for anyone new to the space. And if you're new to the space and you don't have a lot of money and you try and buy some Bitcoin, you're really hoping that Bitcoin has a long-term future. And you're hoping that eventually it will have that 1 million cap in order for you to make some money out of it. However, although I feel that Bitcoin probably does have a long-term future and it will be around, a lot of its market dominance comes from the fact that it is the kind of onboarding and offboarding for a lot of these other cryptocurrencies. Now, if you think about, early days of the internet, AOL was the onboarder and offboarder for the internet. Now, where is that now? And that's the way I would look at this. Other things have got better, other things have improved on the original protocol, still using the same code base, but they've improved on it. So I actually don't see that dominance carrying on. I actually think Satoshi's kind of main thought will probably come true, where it sits around that £1,000 price, and that's kind of where you would want it to be in order for it to be kind of a unit of account. That's really where you're going to want these projects to be. So I actually, as a newcomer to the space with not huge amounts of money to invest, I mean, the amounts of money that I'm investing every month on a regular basis based on my savings, it's between £100 and £300, which is not a lot of money, not for this space. So I have to look at value prospects. I have to look at that money going the furthest. Now, if you start working your way down, there's a few projects here. So Bitcoin Cash, I actually quite like it, but there's a lot of concerns about the project, and we'll see over time whether that comes true. And a lot of that is just purely down to the block size. And the thought is, well, look, Bitcoin Cash has these really small fees and it can transact a lot faster, but when the block size becomes too big in 100 years, it's going to be so big that it's going to be unmanageable. And that's kind of one of the thought processes there. So we'll have to see. But in terms of getting on and off of any other cryptocurrency, I can get on and off from Bitcoin Cash to Decred really, really cheaply. So that's the way I do it. So I actually bypass Bitcoin completely now because I want to get into Decred. And if I do it through Bitcoin, it actually costs me more money than if I did it through Bitcoin Cash. So that's one of my other ways. The other one that I quite like is Dash. Dash has these really fast payment processes at almost no fees. In England, we find it really difficult to get Dash. It's like a secondary coin, just like Decred, to be fair. So if I'm going for a secondary coin through Bitcoin Cash, I'm probably going to go to Decred first, to be fair. And it's the same with Monero and Zcash. These are great projects. But at the moment, I much prefer Decred. And then the final, and just out of interest, just so you know, this list that you're looking at here, these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 coins, that's the top 100. So that's the top. If you go to CoinMarketCap and you try and look for coins with a maximum supply of 21 million, that's what you're going to find. You're going to find these 7 in the top 100. And I have excluded Bitcoin Gold and I have excluded Bitcoin SV just purely because there's some data concerns that I don't quite understand. And I don't feel that it would benefit going too deeply into those 2 coins at this time. They're still on my radar and they may be great in the future, but I'm not putting them on this list just purely because there's a couple of concerns there. The final one is Horizon. Now, the development of Horizon actually hasn't met a lot of the potentials that I need a coin to fulfill before I start investing, but it's a really good project. And I was listening to a podcast the other day on I forgot the podcast, Charlie Shrem's show, Stories, and he interviewed this guy, and the lead developer for the Horizon was actually saying he really likes the Decred project, which was really interesting. And so it tells me that he's doing his research, and they've taken a few things from the Decred project and a few others. But so it has the potential for the future, and it might be something worth looking at. But if you look at this, there's really only these coins that are acting correctly in the top 100. If you go into the top 200, top 300, top 1,000, there are a few more. But when you try and get them to meet certain criteria, then they're not quite there yet. So you have to be very careful about that. And I am really looking for coins with a potential for a long-term future. This is where my kind of thesis comes true. If it doesn't have the long-term future, it's not going to work very well for me. Now, final thought. Satoshis. So the Satoshi thing is also really interesting because not a lot of people understand this, but with a consensus change, a Satoshi can actually be divided up into 16. So you can actually have a lot more Satoshis per coin. I have a couple of concerns with this being divided even more, but because it just seems like a strange kind of money printing. So anyone that got in early all of a sudden has more Satoshis to play with. So I'm not an advocate of doing that. But if it ever did get to in 200-300 years time or whatever, however long it takes to develop a project, there would be that potential. My feeling is that there will be lots of these projects doing the right thing. Like I said, currently I've got 8 projects on my list that are doing the right thing, and that's, that's a lot of coins. So I feel that the world won't just go to one coin. I feel that it will go to lots and lots of different coins. I could even see a case for maybe having 20 or 30 of these coins. So don't get too wrapped up in, it's got to be Bitcoin. I don't buy into that one little bit, and I don't feel that anyone new to the space would buy into that, just purely because we're so early to this space and already it costs so much to get one Bitcoin. I just think, yes, it's great software, but it's open source for a start, so it needs to be improved on all the time, and it needs to show its potential. And there's a few things there, especially with the community being quite toxic, that kind of says to me, no, I don't feel that it's going to be the only coin. And I also don't feel that in the long term, in the 10, 20 years time, long term, that it will still have that number one slot either. So that'll be an interesting one to go out on. So Thanks for watching. I hope you found that useful. If you want to subscribe to the channel, that's great. We're still heading towards our 100 subscribers so we can open up the CS. So all your support there would be great. If you have any feedback, if there's anything you want to know more about, please chuck us a comment down below. If you like the content, obviously give us a thumbs up. If you didn't like the content, well, you can keep quiet. no, you can comment and tell me what you'd like me to improve, and that's absolutely fine. It'd be great to hear from you guys. So have a good one.